Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show where I'm constantly exploring new ways to replace animals with science. I think I've done at least once before. Well, I mean, we've done NF trees and replacing spines with asparagus and replacing plastic with cow's blood. So it's a theme. And I come to you live from Crater Valley on the moon. Dog, Cat, Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Thursday. Twinning Thursday. It feels like I've done this before this week. I'm having deja vu. Or deja Ted? I don't know. But good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening. But before we get into today's science topic, who's joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening? The Alexander. Good evening. Mike R. Good evening. Molly Okami. Good evening. Darren Root. Hello. Datura Jones. Hello. Kiever Dam. Good evening to you, and thank you, Kiever Dam, as always, for providing the links to our friends AJ, Ron Harushan, Angela Ariaga, and Kristen. There are fundraisers there. You guys can take a look at those. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share those out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you for that ahead of time, and thank you, Kiever Dam, as always, for providing those links. Luke Skywalker, too. Good evening. Tyr Alexander, the Scourge. Good evening. And Kiever Dam, thank you so much. Would genetic diversity count as DEI? Well, you're trying to get ahead of the game here. We haven't even heard what the argument is yet. But maybe. I guess we'll see how our speaker decides to use the terms. But, okay, I'll keep that one in mind. We'll see. Boy, oh boy, trying to get ahead of the game on the bingo card. By the way, bingo card tonight is bingo card C. I didn't put a poll up today. I spaced on that. But since we had bingo card A last night, I thought I'll just go to the opposite end of the spectrum and go to bingo card C tonight. So bingo card C, links are in the description. Tack Alpaca, good evening. Full Metal Joker, good evening. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Well, hello, Kyle. Hero Soldier, good evening. Evil One, good evening. Angelverse, good evening to you. Advocatus Diaboli, good evening. Spider-Man, good evening. Your internet's favorite lunatic, or your ridiculous lunatic, good evening. Green Death, good evening. Leanna Johnston, good evening to you. Anybody else before I move on? Corey Suzuki, good evening. And I think that's everybody. If I missed anyone, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good evening. Yeah, so tonight I thought I'd go down a little bit more serious route, perhaps. Maybe nothing that's so outwardly controversial. This is more of a sales pitch idea, right? But I'm always curious when somebody offers up something that is supposed to be a total solution to a problem. Because I always wonder, total solutions to problems oftentimes feel like snake oil. But who knows? We'll find out, because tonight we're going to find out whether or not this new technology could end animal testing. Now, as I said in the notice for tonight's stream, I don't think anybody really relishes the idea of testing pharmaceuticals and other procedures and things like that on poor innocent little animals. But oftentimes it's either that or test on humans, and there's far more ethical questions in regards to that than there is in, using lab mice and stuff. So, I guess the question is, what exactly is it that she's attempting to replace? What technology is to be used? And will she sell me or us on the idea that it can effectively replace animal testing or testing on biological creatures for drugs and surgeries and whatever else we do in our mad scientist ways? I guess we'll find out. JB, good evening. But with that, let's get going. Now, I do have to warn, this recording was very, very soft, very quiet. I had to boost it quite a bit to make it feel like a comfortable level. So to me, it sounds perfectly fine. Maybe still a little bit, underscored, but hopefully you guys can hear it. So I guess we'll find out in a second. So I'll start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it. If you can't, this will be a very short show, and then we will proceed.
Growing up here in North Carolina, I spent much of my childhood playing with the animals in my backyard.
Oh, so you were a Disney princess in training. You guys hear that okay in the in the chat. Sounds good, says Mike. R 5x5 says Kiro Soldier. All right. So you spent your youth playing with the animals in the backyard. Well, strangely enough, that's already a childhood or family anecdote. So let's go over to the bingo card and circle childhood or family anecdote and free space because it's free. Remember, this is bingo card C. Links are in the description. Remind ourselves what we are listening for tonight. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I guess we'll see, and Kiever Dam's already given me incentive to look for that one intently. Word salad, mind reading or assumes motives, a list, marginalized or marginalization, patriarchy, contradicts own point or argument, feminism, attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase, systemic or institutional, anecdote that probably never happened, white supremacy, leaves out vital context, weightless example or non sequitur, sales pitch for product or service. I think that's inherent to the talk, but we'll get there when we get there. Privilege, collectivize his own demographic, self-vilification or wretchedness, economic disparity, benevolent condescension, plays victim, deceptive statistics, and lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. So far on the board, we have free space and childhood or family anecdote.
My twin sister Julia and I would raise tadpoles and go swimming with the frogs. We would build bird houses out of gourds and feed the squirrels blueberry muffins.
God, you guys were Disney princesses, jeez.
And to this day, we give them endearing names like Alan after the Hangover character.
Oh. Okay. Was the frog acting drunk at the time?
For a certain squirrel's habit of getting himself stuck in our gutters. Fast forward to the summer after my first year at Duke.
Okay. And again, I do have to pause occasionally just for YouTube, but she is very chipper. She's very intent. She's very focused. All right. Can't wait.
When I was inspired to apply this curiosity for the natural world to a career in science.
Oh my God. And she does a little shoulder shake too with that. Boy, a career in science. She's so excited.
Eager to join the research community and drive the advancement of science, I began my search for a lab. However, I felt one thing holding me back from truly embracing this newfound passion for scientific research.
Men. The boys club. No. Let me guess. It was animal testing. I'm not going to give myself a psychic stinger if I get that one right, because that's kind of part and parcel with the title.
Something unexpected. My conscience.
Oh, unexpectedly, my conscience. Suddenly, Jiminy Cricket appears.
Conducting research on animals felt wrong. I couldn't imagine giving a mouse that I had raised a terminal disease.
Well, then just get a mouse you hadn't raised. Then it'll make it much easier. I don't know. Maybe. Yes, no, maybe. Or maybe, actually, this would be more appropriate. I don't know. I think at a certain point there has to be some level of professional dispassion that comes with certain scientific endeavors. But okay, so you had a problem messing around with animals for testing. Okay, I understand. I do understand. All right.
Or euthanizing a rabbit simply because it was no longer useful to my research.
Okay. I await your solution.
I became discouraged that I might have to compromise my love of animals to work in the perfect lab. That is, until I found the Musa Lab.
The Musa Lab. Is that where they create Musa? I don't know. I got nothing. I don't know if there's anything to joke about here. Tier Alexander, Scribe, can you rename deceptive statistics to poorly defined statistics? There is no way for us to know if they're being deceptive or not, and we should give the benefit of the doubt. Well, I think last night's stream was actually a pretty good example of why deceptive statistics can work, because somebody will bring up the percentages of this demographic doing this and this demographic doing that, and then just leave it hanging. Or try to make a false comparison between the two. So I think for now it still works. So far, I mean, we've seen these things before. Like the guy with the the bell curve charts or whatever, and then the guy last night. So I'm still weighing on whether it happens often enough. It's still in sort of a probationary period, but the times where it's come up, it's felt pretty right so far. So we'll see. I mean, if we see a pattern occur where it's more like, well, you know, it fits better to say that they're poorly defined rather than deceptive. But I mean, I give it the benefit of the doubt to the person on the stage that they've planned out their talk. If they're bringing up statistics and they don't make the connection between them, or they leave the relevance hanging, that feels like an intentional act on the part of the speaker. I don't want to necessarily forgive them their trespasses just because they use statistics and we don't necessarily get them. It's like, well, either you made the connection or you didn't, or using them to back up your argument or you're not. So anyway, that's just my off-the-cuff reaction.
At the Musa Lab, we recognize the need for novel preclinical testing platforms that are more ethical, more physiologically relevant to the human body, and more cost-effective.
Okay, well, that is a list. That is a list of goals or mission statement kind of stuff there. So circling a list on the board. This might be a relatively sparse presentation since it's very science-based, but you never know. Okay, so you want to be more ethical, more physiologically relevant to humans, and cost-effective. Okay, but your main concern is you don't want to make use of animals in inhumane ways. Okay, so how do you solve for all of these three problems without using animals for testing?
With the belief that animal models will soon be replaced by more advanced technologies.
If you say AI, I'm not going to be impressed.
As part of this lab, I could work on creating the solution to the ethical concern that I had grappled with firsthand.
Okay. What technology will replace observing the biological functions and consequences of pharmaceutical testing on a living creature? Or whatever else you're using a living creature for.
And it was in my third year of working in this lab that I was truly able to witness the direct impact of my research.
Okay, and that was?
You may remember from my childhood picture that I have a twin sister.
Yes. You didn't start experimenting on her, did you? Because that brings back some particular memories from history.
So when my research mentor, Dr. Rohan Bhattacharya, came to me with a project where I could work on improving treatments for twin girls at Duke Hospital.
What? Okay, I'm curious again. What specifically is a treatment exclusively to twin girls?
I jumped at the opportunity. This project, proposed by Dr. Samira Musa herself and one of our collaborators, Dr. Jensen Hall, would help patients of Dr. Hall's who had been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease at just 9 years old.
Okay, what does this have to do with you and your twin sister?
Due to a novel mutation in their DNA.
Do you and your sister possess this? Did I miss something?
Kidney disease impacts more than 1 in 10 people around the world and is also a top 10 cause of death due to its limited treatment options.
Okay. I believe you. What does this have to do with you and your twin sister?
Despite treatment with a common kidney disease drug, the girls' kidney function had not recovered, as evidenced by persistently high levels of protein in their urine.
The girls. What? I'm missing. I must have missed something. Oh, what girls? Like other twins?
To make matters even worse, this common kidney disease drug was known to cause toxic side effects in many patients, which could damage their kidneys even further.
Well, it sounds like one of those warning lists they put onto pharmaceuticals on TV ads these days. It's like, this kidney disease cure could cause kidney disease. Okay, and?
Now, this situation was shocking to me.
What, that pharmaceuticals can have side effects?
Almost like a cruel game of pharmaceutical roulette, the limited treatment options available could be life-saving for some while causing devastating effects in others.
That's the nature of pharmaceuticals.
Was this really the best medical research had to offer?
At that time, I'm going to say yes.
The answer lies in a law created about a century ago. The FDA Act of 1938.
Okay.
This was a reactionary law born out of tragedy.
Most laws are, honestly.
Due to the lack of toxicity testing, before a novel antibiotic was distributed to the population, over 100 patients died in a mass poisoning.
Okay. Well, we are talking about in the 1930s.
At the time, animals were our best option to replicate human drug response.
Okay. I admittedly, the history behind animal testing and so on is it's kind of interesting, I guess, but you don't need to, explain to me that we use animals in testing, so we could just skip the history and go to your proposed solution.
So, the law mandated that new drugs first be tested in animals during preclinical trials, and only then tested in humans during clinical trials.
Okay, and ethically speaking, given the cause of making that law, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Since the passage of this law, chimpanzees, man's closest relatives, have been subject to brain damage, castration, disease, and death, all in the name of science.
True. Would you rather replace them with humans? The limitations of scientific study throughout the ages is where we're at. So now you have a solution to this, right? You're not going to pass judgment on previous scientists for using the options they had available to them, are you?
It took 77 years for the NIH to finally revoke its support for the use of chimpanzees in biomedical research.
Okay.
Yet, if research on chimpanzees for the advancement of medicine is unacceptable, why do we feel comfortable with these same experiments being conducted in other primates, mice, and even man's best friend?
Because they're further away from looking like humans and makes it more comfortable for us to do so. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, well, what would you have wanted people to do 20 years ago instead? I mean, I get it. I'm listening to this because I understand how animals are used in testing, at least in a 30,000 foot level sense. All right, you've got almost halfway through your talk. You don't need to convince me that we use animals for testing and that it is ethically touchy, all things considered. So now, with the latter part of your talk, you're going to tell us what your alternative/solution is, correct?
Animal models will soon be outdated for modeling human drug response.
Soon be outdated, why?
In fact, out of every 10 drugs that succeed in animal preclinical testing, only one makes it through clinical trials.
So, there's a winnowing effect on research. I mean, people put out 17 theories on how something works and, 2 pass muster of testing and peer review. So?
And out of the 10% that do make it through, they don't work for every patient.
Well, that's always going to be the... I'm getting ready to circle deceptive statistics here, but it's like, and? Are you guaranteeing you're going to come up with a way to make drugs that work for every patient?
This is because the inbred mouse models that are often used in preclinical testing are almost completely genetically identical.
Okay.
We should instead be testing new drugs on a platform that is representative of human genetic diversity.
Diversity? Oh, Keever Dam. I'm just gonna have to give this to. This is for Keever. All right. Well, in the sense of a scientific context, I'm circling diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. You know what? I'm also going to circle deceptive statistics because none of that argument about the process of pharmaceutical testing resulting in a smaller success rate versus a large number of attempts, and then some will work for some people and some won't. Well, that's just, some people like asparagus, some people are allergic. That's just life and biology. It doesn't mean anything. Unless you're somehow going to be guaranteeing that drugs can be tailored exactly to individuals. I can't even imagine the cost of that process.
And can account for the widely different drug responses experienced by different people.
Well, how do you know until you take it? It's like, okay, we're going to give you phase 1 of this kidney disease drug, and then, oh, I didn't even get a chance to try phase 2. He's already dead. Okay.
Exclusive reliance on animal models for preclinical testing not only wastes animal lives and puts clinical trial patients at risk, but it also contributes to the inhibitory costs of pharmaceuticals and slows down potentially life-saving therapeutic development.
So, again, are you telling me it's going to be cheaper in the future to tailor-make a pharmaceutical for an individual's biochemistry than it is to have sort of the widest net kind of idea for it? Okay, but again, you don't have to sell me on the ethical argument of using animals for testing. Okay, we've been there, we've done that. It's a very short conversation. You're halfway through your talk. What are you proposing be done?
On average, it takes about $1 billion and 12 years of pharmaceutical research and development to bring a new drug to market.
Yeah, and you know why that's not necessarily a bad thing? Because there's a phrase in life, I don't know if you've heard it, it's called speed kills. It is often a good idea not to just run with something without rigorous testing first before you put it into people. Now I want a cure for Alzheimer's. Oh boy howdy, do I want a cure, or at least an effective treatment for Alzheimer's. At the same time, I'd rather it be one that's been carefully and painstakingly tested before it's put into my body, because I'd rather not find out after the fact that I've given myself a brain tumor. And if it takes 10 or 20 years, it sucks. I'd rather it was here now. I want it now. Stamp my foot. But, okay, so now not only are you promising to replace animal testing, not only are you at least implicitly promising that we will have pharmaceuticals that are tailor-made for individuals, but now you're saying you're going to somehow reduce the amount of time necessary to effectively test pharmaceuticals for human distribution. Great. That's wonderful. You have 6 minutes to finally tell me what you are selling me.
Meanwhile, experts estimate that in just 5 years, novel preclinical testing platforms could reduce the cost of pharmaceutical development by 20%.
Okay, so things already in process might do this. Well, great. So, wait, what are you saying?
And the time spent in preclinical trials by over 10%.
Maybe, could, might, and?
For the past century, modernizing preclinical trials has been an impossible dream due to the 1938 Act and other similar FDA regulations.
What is your problem with the Act? I mean, fundamentally speaking, up to this point where I'm assuming you have some kind of scientific or technological solution to this you're going to offer. Up to this point, what would you have recommended be done otherwise? You know, with hindsight being 2020, and I'm not being sarcastic here when I ask this question. If she has all these ethical, concerns, and she's got all this criticism and everything else, even though it's effectively irrelevant at this point, if she could, wave a magic wand and change policy from the 1930s forward, what would she have recommended otherwise within the boundaries of existing technology to achieve the same ends as far as pharmaceutical development and testing and so on? I mean, you want to give me the history lesson on it? Fine. But if you're going to criticize its use over time, well, at least tell me what you would have done differently. Because, it make it sound like everybody that worked on pharmaceuticals up to this point was just some kind of like nincompoop monster or something. But, okay. It's your talk.
However, new legislation has just been passed with the FDA Modernization Act 2.0 that is set to revolutionize preclinical trials as we know them today.
In what way?
This act recognizes new preclinical testing platforms.
Such as?
Many of which are being developed right now, right here at Duke.
Right here, right now, watching the world wake up from animal testing. Okay, would you like to name one? I want to get excited. Tell me about one of these brand new platforms that excludes the necessity of animal testing. Go ahead.
As viable replacements for animal models.
Okay. I've waited 7 minutes of your 12-minute talk. You got 5 minutes left. Go.
One of these platforms
yes.
is an organ on a chip.
Is an organ on a chip. Okay, I kind of made a joke in my tweet for this show, replacing, using microchips to replace Chip and Dale. I didn't know it would actually be something called a chip, but okay.
My research at the Musa Lab specifically focuses on a type of organ on a chip called a kidney on a chip.
A kidney on a chip. So does it replace an actual kidney?
Developed by Dr. Samira Musa herself.
I guess you're putting all your faith in this one doctor, huh?
These 3D culture devices are so small, they can fit in the palm of your hand.
There was somebody else who, not that long ago, I guess it's several years now, was pitching a solution to a medical problem by way of something that could fit like a bread box on your desk. Just like miniaturizing the entire process of something, and somehow was able to break the laws of thermodynamics. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of Theranos. But okay, it's a chip that can fit in the palm of my hand. What does it do?
In fact, I have one right here in my pocket.
Oh my gosh! What does it do?
And yet this device, no bigger than a flash drive, can replicate the full function of your kidneys.
Really? It can replicate the full function of my kidney? Oh, well, is it a kidney?
Our devices utilize microfluidics.
I can't believe... I just brought up Elizabeth Holmes, and she brings up microfluidics. Okay, this is kind of a deep cut stuff, but if you guys have ever watched a documentary on Elizabeth Holmes, one of her first ideas was trying to figure out how to make a patch that you could wear that would automatically inject people with the drugs that they needed to stay alive, so it could monitor your body for, your insulin levels, and then when necessary would automatically inject you with insulin and so on. And part of her pie-in-the-sky dream about this involved microfluidics. I mean, I realize it is kind of a stretch, but I'll listen. Okay, so you're going to take this piece of 3D printed plastic, and it simulates the functions of a kidney. Does the plastic interact with the chemicals that you'd be testing on this proverbial kidney the same way as, cells would? You're not going to tell me you're going to replace testing pharmaceuticals on biological material with that tiny piece of plastic, are you? And if you are, you've got less than 6 minutes, well, hell, at this point, less than 5 minutes to sell me on how that works exactly.
Which means they contain tiny channels similar in scale to your kidney tissues.
Similar. Oh, boy.
We line these channels with the patient's stem cells and flow certain fluids and molecular cues in them to encourage the stem cells inside to grow and mature into kidney tissues.
Okay, so you're basically cloning kidney tissue into a plastic lattice. Okay, and this has never been done before. Maybe it hasn't. Okay.
Our devices contain two channels, a urinary and a capillary channel, to replicate the filtration function that is created by the interaction between these two different tissue types in a real kidney.
In that tiny little plastic thing. You're going to replicate the functions, the conditions of a kidney within a human body in that tiny little plastic thing. Okay.
In the lab, we personalized these kidneys on chips to our patients at Duke Hospital. And tested a variety of different drugs on these platforms in order to find better treatments for the girls.
The girls. Why is this just... I missed it. She brought up her twin sister. I don't understand why that was brought up. Unless something was cut out, the girls. Who are the girls?
Our results have been astounding.
I'm sure they have been.
Not only were we able to replicate similar symptoms as seen in our patients.
Similar symptoms from a piece of plastic. Well, how did the plastic pieces tell you they were feeling after you gave them these I'm trying here, guys. I'm hopeful. I like scientific advancement. I like less invasive ways in which to test out medicines and find new ways to do things. But I don't know. This just sounds sounds like there's a lot being left out. I don't know.
Replicate similar symptoms as seen in our patients in these kidneys on chips. But we were also able to find a drug combination that improved the disease phenotype.
Improved the disease phenotype. Okay. I'm flashing back to my biology classes back in the early days. Improved the disease's phenotype? You mean improved knowledge of? I'm really confused. Somebody in the chat who knows this better than I do. I might need some kind of explanation in a comment or something later for other people's reference, if not my own.
And I hope that this could change the lives of the girls at Duke Hospital.
You hope? I mean, it hasn't?
Allowing them to be kids again.
Who are you talking about? Okay, seriously, did I miss something? Who are you speaking of? You said that you had a twin sister, and then that just kind of disappeared. Did I miss something?
Who knows? Maybe they like to play with the animals in their backyard just like me.
Who are you talking about?
And these organs on chips aren't only helpful for kidney disease patients. In fact, it was recently discovered that had drugs been tested on livers on chips prior to use in clinical trials, hundreds of lives lost to drug-induced liver injury could have been saved.
How do you know that for sure? Okay, so this little machined piece of plastic effectively replaces internal human organs for the sake of testing. Okay. Now is the time where I'd like to see some actual evidence, some studies, some numbers, something you could cite. You said some things before. Can you offer them now? I mean, you're our research scientist, right?
And these single organ models are just the beginning.
Okay, hold on a second here. Tier Alexander. She is working with twin girls. Those are her patients. Did she say that earlier? I apologize if I missed that. Maybe it went over my head or something. I know she brought up the fact that she and her own sister are twins. But, okay, so she has a pair of twin sisters that they are testing these kidney drugs on. Okay, I'll stipulate to that. I won't argue about it anymore or act bewildered. All right, so I missed it, obviously. All right, so they've been testing their pseudo kidneys on, well, not on, but they've been taking the stem cells from these two girls, putting them into these plastic things to test kidney drugs. Seems like kind of a small sample size, but okay. But you're sure that if they'd done this with livers, then it would have saved lives. Somehow you know this to be true. Okay.
Already under development are bodies on chips, which
What?
combine multiple different organs on chips to replicate a full body response.
Except you... Okay, hold on. I'm circling sales pitch for product or service because we've definitely crossed that threshold. I was inclined to circle weightless example or non sequitur for the whole twins thing, but I guess, okay, she's got patients who are twins. It was just a side anecdote or whatever. Can you... Hey, I know, maybe this is just me being cynical. Can you really replicate the effects of a pharmaceutical on a person through plastic chips and stem cells? Can you really get as much information on effects, positive or negative, from stem cells in plastic? I'd need some more evidence before I'm convinced.
Just imagine.
I can imagine quite a bit.
Your whole body on a chip.
I'm sure there are no ethical questions about that idea either.
Despite all these advancements, there still remain some practicality concerns when looking at applying these organs on chips to industry.
Okay, well, even though you haven't actually offered up any evidence that these things will do everything that you say, except anecdotally, sure, I appreciate the fact you're at least coming in with some exceptions to your wide-eyed optimism.
For instance, workflow changes and technical training required may need a large investment before profits are realized.
Oh, you're looking for investors. Right, yeah, you gotta spend money to make money, I guess. Yeah, okay.
In addition, a lot of work remains to scale up the manufacturing and operation of these devices.
You first need to prove they are effective. You've told us that they would have saved lives. You've told us that they did all these things. Why aren't you showing us photos of your research papers or citing something from the Nature or the Journal Medicine or something or the AMA? Other than just telling us these things are revolutionary, you kind of have to show us something, cite something.
To address the thousands of candidates in drug screenings. In addition, there remains some hesitation around the reliability of these devices.
I can't imagine why there would be. I mean, it's just a piece of plastic that you say you're shunting in stem cells and then injecting it with a pharmaceutical and somehow, without telling us, measuring its effects on said cells in a way that could be extrapolated safely and effectively to simulate what would happen to a human being. Every time I start to try to break this down in my mind, how many steps you would have to go through and how many different things would have to be verified before you could say that these plastic chip things are a reasonable facsimile of a human organ, the less and less I am convinced. So I can't imagine why there's some hesitancy. Do you have a counterpoint to that hesitancy?
I know from working with these chips firsthand that something as minuscule as a tiny air bubble can completely derail the whole experiment.
Okay, well, I at least appreciate your admitting the fallacies of the process or the potential. Okay. But your rejoinder is...
Yet, collaborations between industry and academia are already beginning to overcome these challenges.
How? This is where you tell us how. This is where you provide us evidence, because so far, it's a trust me story. That's all I've heard. You didn't have a picture of your published paper on the twin testing. You didn't show anything or cite anything that said, oh, well, we made artificial kidneys out of these chips and we tested these drugs on these things and we noticed and we made note of the effects and so on. And then, even though we, probably would be breaking several laws in doing so, we then tested these drugs on the twins themselves and we compared the results, and they were either the same or similar enough as to be useful. Because if you don't compare and contrast between actually testing it on a human kidney and testing it on your artificial kidney, how do you know how effective it was? How do you know whether or not the results you got from the chip will line up in the person until you test it on the person as well? Did I miss that part? Did she do that part? I'm...
One recent collaboration of note is between the pharmaceutical company Pfizer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Boy, and if there is a pharmaceutical company that I have absolute trust in, it's Pfizer.
Known for the development of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Exactly.
And the organ-on-a-chip company Draper.
The organ-on-a-chip company Draper? It's not run by a guy named Don, is it?
This collaborative research team was able to test over 96 different organ models in one chip.
Oh my God! I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with that information. Did they clean it in between tests? Did it know it was a kidney one day and a liver the next, or was it confused at some point?
Actually, in one culture plate.
I still don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information. Oh, come on. I was hoping for something a bit more, no pun intended, cut and dry with this one. Instead, I said at the top, this is sounding more like snake oil.
And personally...
No, I don't want to hear personally. I want to hear from our research we found, or our research showed, or here's a reference to the paper or the article that we published after we did this research. Okay, personally, what personally?
In my role as a consultant after graduation...
A consultant?
I hope to help academia and industry ensure that these platforms are not just promising in the lab, but also transformative in the lives of patients.
You just told us that they do these things. You don't have to hope. You already know. Correct? It's not a guessing game anymore. You just told us that these things would have saved hundreds of lives of liver patients. So you already have the certitude of your own research and observations, right? Or don't you? Am I...
To truly affect change, we'll need support from patients and clinical trial participants.
And money from investors into our plastic doohickeys.
Who should expect nothing but the best technologies when it comes to their health.
It's true. I would expect nothing but the best technologies. You haven't shown me that this is the best technology. Thank you, Frosted Glass. British Doritos, 96 organs in one chip. Oh, hey, ooh. Yeah, it almost sounds like the recipe for most hot dogs, doesn't it? Okay, thank you, Frosted Glass. Yeah, all right. This was definitely a sales pitch and snake oil salesman.
If you're tired of hearing the laundry list of side effects at the end of every pharmaceutical commercial,
this will solve that. Lady, again, okay, look. Let's, and I'll just make this my sort of overall conundrum. Let's say everything you're telling me is absolutely correct. Okay, let's just say that these things are a platform and you can test individual liver cells from an individual patient and see which drug cocktail, this, that, and the other. What will be the cost of tailor-making pharmaceuticals per individual patient? How are you going to cut down the cost? Because you're effectively going to have to develop a custom drug for every single person that comes by. Unless you know that there are only a limited number of possible variables from person to person when it comes to possible bad side effects or otherwise from this drug. And then it's like, well, we'll try out 6 on them and see which one works the best. Unless you can guarantee that, then maybe that makes some kind of sense. I don't know. But otherwise, I got a feeling that with the diversity of the human biological condition between individual allergies or different effects or, past injuries or diseases affecting this, that. I've watched a few episodes of House before. I know a thing or two about internal medicine. I'm just saying. But either way, you're really telling me it's going to be cheaper to make a artificial liver and, do a little mix and match with pharmaceuticals to try to find something for someone specifically, than coming up with a one-size-fits-all for all general purposes until you find that person that does need something different and special. I don't know. I don't feel like I've been convinced by this.
it's time to celebrate the advancement of medicine.
It would be nice if you could tell us why I should be celebrating instead of just holding up a plastic chip and saying, this solves the problem.
Towards a platform that is more personalized and inclusive.
Oh, well, Keeverdam, you were psychic again. Diverse, inclusive. Yeah, the square would have been circled otherwise. Good job.
And finally, I ask you, my fellow researchers.
Okay. I mean, watching your talk is a kind of research. Yeah, okay,
To consider whether there's a better way to conduct your research.
I'm sure there's a better way, depending on what we're talking about. Is your way a better way? I don't feel like you proved it.
I am so grateful that the ethical dilemma I faced in my freshman year brought me to the Musa Lab.
Yeah, you're really, really fond of the Musa Lab. Maybe you could, I don't know. Again, it'd be nice if she showed us some evidence. She just tells us it worked, tells us it do this, tells it. It's a trust me story. It's not very convincing.
Yet, animal lovers like me shouldn't have to avoid a lab based on its research methods.
Well, then, if you're not up to the task of the current state of science, then maybe you should get out of the lab. I don't know what to tell you. I don't begrudge somebody. If somebody has such an ethical block in their heart that they can't bring themselves to test pharmaceuticals on a rabbit or a mouse or whatever else, then maybe you need to find a different line of work. That's just the reality of the situation. Unless or until you actually prove that plastic chips can replace animals. Because if you did do that, you didn't say that you did do that. Which is why I'm still kind of like,
It is time that we stand up for preclinical testing that is more ethical, more physiologically relevant.
You haven't, it may indeed, if it worked, it might be more ethical. You haven't proved it's more physiologically relevant. You told us it is. You didn't show us that it is.
And more cost-effective.
You haven't proven that either.
Let's usher in a new era of organs on chips, not chimps. Thank you.
Okay. I'll give her that one. All right, well, I kind of did hope for more out of this. I know. Just me being naive, I guess. If only I'd watched more of these things previously, maybe I wouldn't be so optimistic. But anyway, hope springs eternal. That being the case, let's move on to the bingo card. It's time for the bingo card. We've heard the sales pitch, we've heard the argument. Now we're going to find out how much of it actually equals some bingos. Here's the card as I have it right now. I'll go over it one more time by myself. If you guys have arguments for squares to be circled, hold on to them momentarily, and I'll get to you in a moment. Word salad. I don't know. It's debatable. I mean, there wasn't like one section where I thought she was just going blah, 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 blah. So, but in the overall of the talk, I'll leave that for you guys to decide. Mind reading or assumes motives. Nothing stands out to me in that regard. Marginalization. I mean, you can make the case for the animals were being marginalized in some way. I suppose the chimps. I suppose. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that makes some sense. Circle on that one. Why not? It's my show. Patriarchy, no. Contradicts own point or argument. Well, you know what? No, wait, that's more of a leaves out vital context thing. I'll let you guys sit on that. Feminism, no. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. Did she actually give a name to those organ chips? Was that it? Is that what she called them? Organ chips? Might need somebody to back me up on that one. Systemic or institutional? Yes. She talked about the institutional limitations on research because of the 1938 law. So, yeah. I'll circle that one. Anecdote that probably never happened. You know what? I'm going to hold a bit of a higher standard here, since this was a scientific talk given by a scientist, a research scientist. She did not provide any evidence that her clinical trials with these chips were effective. She didn't give us any evidence that these things actually did what she said that they did. Now, maybe that evidence exists out there somewhere in the world, but this would have been the place to at least cite it. So I have to doubt that her tales of these plastic chips actually were true. White supremacy, no. Leaves out vital context. Okay, so the fact that she brought up people having doubts about these things, but then didn't really go any further than that to prove to us that those doubts were unfounded. Just that, hope, guys, hope and positive thinking will save the day. No. Weightless example, non sequitur. I mean, all of her examples, even those that weren't fully explained, were an attempt, maybe not a successful attempt, to support her argument. And most of her examples were about, laws and how testing used to be done and so on. So if she's trying to make the moral case for why we should end animal testing and why this would be more, I guess those aren't weightless non sequitur. So I don't think so. Privilege. If there is an argument for privilege in there, it's probably pretty abstract. Collectivizes own demographic. Yeah, I am going to do it because, again, this is a science thing. She kept talking about fellow researchers and as a researcher and things like that, so I'm going to go that way. Again, remember, guys, if you have an argument for me to uncircle a square because I went a step too far, I'm open to those as well. Self-vilification or wretchedness. See, this is tough because having a crisis of conscience over testing on animals does not necessarily a self-vilification make. You know what I mean? That's sort of like not taking the role of the bad guy that's expressing your distaste for doing something. I don't know. That might be a tough one. I might need some backup on that one. Economic disparity. Yes, she talked about cost effectiveness and so on and so forth. So in some way, shape, or form, we are talking about pricing things out. Benevolent condescension. I feel as though going all chapter, verse, and history on the moral conundrum of testing on animals was a bit too much. I don't think I needed to have that laid out to me as much as it was. She spent literally half her talk telling us that, testing on animals is less than desirable. I know. I get it. Plays victim. Well, yeah, because at the end there, like I said, if you can't take the heat, get out of the lab. If you're not comfortable with animal testing in place of testing on people, given the limitations of science, law, platforms now, then maybe this isn't the job for you. So, a little bit there. And lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. I could see maybe a stretch argument being made there, but I'll leave that to you guys. I think it's more interesting to have you guys pitch in on some of these things, chip in on some of these things, than it is for me to just go all by myself. Okay, so that being said, that's the that's the card as I have it right now. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, put them in the chat now. I'll scroll up a bit. It helps if you tag me in your argument. And if I miss it or something, please just repost it. Advocast Diablo. Scribe leaves out vital context. Okay. Well, I already circled it, but that's okay. How do we find out if the drugs we are testing for personal efficacy are even safe for use? In general, you have to test drugs on the entirety of a body. I know. Because it could have side effects on other organs. That's the part where it's like, we're going to isolate it to this organ. Now, she said, oh, well, we can have a whole body system. And I'm like, well, yeah, but what if you put the drug into the kidney and the kidney has an effect that, then bleeds off into the heart and maybe the chip whole body solution accounts for that? I don't know. It sounds, let's just put it this way. The whole thing sounds way too good to be true. And as soon as she said microfluidics, I just thought, I'm getting Elizabeth Holmes vibes here. Let's see. Deter Jones, what's the one rule? The more complicated something is, the more likely it is to fail. It has more possibilities for failure states. Yeah. I remember seeing this documentary on World War II, if you can believe it, years ago. And I always remember that they showed the artillery between the German army and the American military. And all the dials and switches and everything that went into the German artillery just to load the thing and fire it, which was all very intricate and very, very well made and handcrafted and all that. But it meant that it took you like 2 minutes to load, fire, unload the shell, reload a new shell, seal it up, and fire it again. Whereas with the American military, it was just like a one-handle push, bam, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's not complicated. It's not as fancy, but it sure as heck is a lot more efficient. Let's see. Ostsan, attempt to coin new buzz phrase, organs on chips, not chimps. You know what? That by itself is legit. That's legit. That's legit. As a tagline, as a sales pitch line, that works. Good job. All right, so, if you can believe it, with that.
I had a dog, and his name was...
What?
I had a dog, and his name was...
Bingo!
Of course!
Oh, won't somebody please?
Bingo. B-I-N-G-O.
Okay!
Right?
Double bingo. Down from the G and diagonal down from the O. Good job, Ostsan. It's almost like watching a game of curling or something. You get like one shot in and it gets you a double point score. Good job. Let's see. Tier Alexander. Self-vilification. She still worked on animals even if she is against up until she found the new laboratory at Duke. Is that how that went? Did she say, again, maybe I'm missing something because she went all over the place. Was that self-vilification? Let me think on that. Let me have a think on that for a second. Unless somebody else wants to give another angle or you've got more to say on it. Or if you can quote her. I don't remember her saying that she felt bad about it. Scarlett, she contradicted her point. She explained how these chips can personalize treatment, not remove the need for the genetic whole body testing we use animals for. Is that leaves out vital context, though? I mean, did she say something that contradicted her argument explicitly? All right, I need something that isn't just leaves out vital context. I know I'm being picky here. I'm being picky. Luke Skywalker 2. I say we just slap a WTF award on and call it a day, Scarlett. I didn't quite get that close with it. I knew it was going to be something probably snake oily before I started, but her talking about how a used drug had specific negative effects on twins and was not tested for could be unconscious bias. Well, basing her entire pitch on this stage on just the one test between two patients, they just happen to be genetic twins, and then saying that actually extending it out and then just saying, oh, well, we tested it on two people so far, and if we had done it on this, that, and the other, unconscious bias. Well, she definitely had, I don't even know if it was unconscious bias. She had conscious bias. This was like the one-size-fits-all solution to all animal testing. So, at least in that.
Bingo. What? Of course!
All right, so there's another bingo. Let's see. If she's going to bitch about people testing on animals, even she both vilifying herself and being hypocritical. See, the only reason that the reason that I'm hesitating is because, for the same reason that I was sort of criticizing her complaints earlier, what other option would she have to do the science? And is she vilifying herself? Her crisis of conscience, does that make her a villain? I mean, I guess in her own mind, but also she didn't really explain what other options that she have in entering this area of research. I know. I'm really struggling with whether or not she was vilifying herself or just like being regretful over the necessity of the practice. You know? I don't know. I'm still trying to understand. Corey Suzuki. I'm still trying to understand how the twin thing played into a kidney disorder non sequitur. I mean, I guess that one or both of them had this disorder, and so they used one as the control. But then that would indicate that they actually tested the pharmaceuticals on the twins, right? Or at least on one. Or maybe used the stem cells from one and had the other one be... I don't know. She didn't. This is the problem. She didn't explain how they conducted their experiment or what the twins thing had... Okay, you know what? That... Yeah, it is a weightless example because she didn't tell us how that was supposed to be relevant to testing this drug. Just if it was just like simulating somebody's kidney in a chip, why did you need the twins for? What does that have to do with anything? Yeah. Okay. Legit. Let's see. Asan, there is work with microfluid flow, but last I heard it's not far enough along to replicate organs. The focus was also on getting a portable lab on a chip that could be used in the field. Yeah, and like I said, it also it brought me all the way back to Elizabeth Holmes. And as soon as I heard microfluidics, it's still a very, very young science. And to say that you can go from that notion all the way to stimulating organs on a tiny little chip. If she said something like, here's this box where we can grow an artificial specimen of someone's kidney or liver or something, and then this does that. I might be more inclined to think that that feels a bit more reasonable. But to just hold up a little piece of plastic that you printed off of like a 3D printer or something and say, here's a liver, like, no. That doesn't wash. That wasn't wash. She could have chosen a less experimental avenue of research. It's true. I'm hesitating in saying that she was vilifying herself because she was conducting medical research. And in medical research, again, pragmatic being what it is, you have to test on animals sometimes. And even though she was having a crisis of conscience over it, she wanted to find a more ethical way to do it. I don't know that she was vilifying herself in the process. I didn't get that sense. I get that she was regretful. I get that she was reluctant. But, or finding a different way, I don't know if wretchedness or self-vilification was part of her deal. Just that she wanted to find a better way. So, I mean, she's definitely vilifying, the process with chimps prior to and so on. I don't know. Catherine H., kickin' chicken, excited to watch this tomorrow from the beginning. Well, I'm excited for you to watch it tomorrow, and I hope your excitement maintains itself. Advocate Sally, Scarlett, she failed her point. She stated it would remove the need for animal testing, then explain how this works to personalize, not her opening point. Maybe I need to add something like contradicts or fails at point or argument. Maybe that would make it easier in some of these instances, right? Because you can negate your argument by simply not succeeding in making it. I might have to make that revision. Does that sound like a fair addition to that square? So I'm not making a whole new square and trying to double up. Contradicts or fails own point or argument. I think I might make that revision. So on that basis, sort of preloading it, I agree. She ultimately did not succeed in convincing us, even partially, that what she was saying or the basis of her presentation actually holds in.
Bingo!
What? Bingo! Yeah!
Of course!
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable compromise. Yeah. Contradicts or fails to make. Something like that. I'll think about it. Asan, Scribelight, if she wasn't trying to push the organ chips instead of just going along with animal testing and complaining, then I could see self-vilification, but she is trying to sell an alternate method. Yeah, that's where I'm a little iffy on saying that she was vilifying herself. Like if she had said something like, I tested this drug on Alan, the white rat, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was becoming the monster of the history of this, that. If she had been a bit more dramatic about her crisis of conscience or something and been more sort of self-deprecating, let's say, then I'd feel better circling that one. But I just didn't quite get there. I just kept seeing that, okay, she doesn't like that this is the method. She's trying to find an alternative, but that was just the necessity of science. That's not something that she was internalizing onto herself. I know I'm being nitpicky. Maybe I am being nitpicky. I don't know. But again, if somebody has an argument, they still want to make an argument on it, or want to cite something specifically from the talk that she said or otherwise, I'm happy to hear it in a comment or over on the Discord server. And by the way, did you know I have a Discord server? Why? I have a Discord server. Am I stalling while I create a link to the Discord server for this show? Yes. So I have it now. I'll get to it momentarily. Okay, any other arguments for squares to be circled, guys? Last call. Luke Skywalker 2. Contradicts or fails to make own point argument. Yeah, contradicts own point / fails to make argument or something like that. I'll think about it between now and next week. I think that's a fair addition, I think. Tiara says she could have moved to different fields or chose to be a human test. Yeah, okay, again, there's a lot of things that coulda, shoulda, woulda, but the question is, in the course of the presentation, within the boundaries of what she said, how she characterized things, and specifically in this instance, how she referred to or characterized herself in the process. Did she vilify herself, or was she simply regretful that there were no other options, but now glad that there might be? I know, I might be threading the needle here, but I think for the sake of things, I think it's a fair hesitation on my part. Advocast Diabli, patriarchy. Clearly men created this method of testing. Those evil bastard. Obviously, if she'd said something like, it was old white men that decided to mutilate chimpanzees, like, okay. But no, I think that might be a bridge too far. That might be a bridge too far. All right, so word salad, mind reading assumes motives, patriarchy, feminism, white supremacy, privilege, self-vilification, or wretchedness. I know. The most controversial one is going to be that self-vilification thing. Given the subject matter, given her complaints, I get it. But it just didn't quite cross the line for me. But again, I'm happy to take further arguments or refinements either in the comments below or over on the Discord server. By the way, I have a Discord server. Link to the Discord server is now in the chat. If you'd like to join the Discord server, all you have to do is click on that link. You can find yourself then on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watch the stream, are not a bot, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement of joining the Discord server. And today's secret word is microfluidics. Yeah, I'm going to give you a spelling test on this one. Microfluidics. Just say hello, microfluidics, and I'll know that you watched the show. Beyond that, you can find me here Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday stream. I'll talk about some news stories over the course of the week that I found interesting. Maybe you will too. And as always, you can find me here on Thursday nights for TED Excellence, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. I also make frequent appearances now on Midnight's Edge in the morning, usually on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. And when things line up, because this week I felt yucky, so I didn't do it this week. But on Tuesday nights, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm over on Midnight's Edge After Dark. I'm just a Midnight's Edge kind of guy lately. I don't know. I just one of those things. It's like I'm addicted or something. But elsewise, everyone, I want to thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening for another episode of TED Excellence. Leave a like if you would, or a dislike if you want to. I appreciate the engagement either way. If you're listening to this in the future and have something to say about the talk or otherwise, please leave a comment. And also, tell your friends about the show. If you have any friends, I hope you do. And let them know if you like this kind of thing. And also, if there's any content creator out there whose content that you like it, share it, let people know that you like it. And if you do share it on Twitter specifically, in my case and others, tag them in your recommendation so they know that you did it, so they can thank you personally, because I try to do so every time I see it. Anyway, everyone, hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here has been so well behaved. You have very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. But yes, have a good rest of your Thursday. Have a good Friday ahead of you. Have a good weekend, everyone. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care, and bye-bye.